Hey, Mike here, and welcome to a bidding deep dive. So in the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to dive deep into the topic of bidding, and we're going to cover the flexible strategies that are available through the Google interface, how to apply them. Have a look at Fred Vallet's bid buckets. I'm really loving this topic, and Fred's helped me put together something that I'll show you and walk you through. Talk about conversion optimizer and how that's different from the target CPA bid strategy. Bid adjustments, used to be called bid modifiers, which is covered, this little bit is covered in AdWords Bootcamp. Just covering it again here so it's with all of the other stuff on bidding. And we'll talk about Savvy number, which is this maybe oversimplified, but a simplified version of rolling all of the KPIs in an account up into one number so that you can judge the health of an account very quickly, which is great from a management point of view. So let's start at the beginning. What is the objective of your AdWords account? We've seen a lot here at WebSavvy. A lot of AdWords accounts obviously come past my desk. I audit an awful lot of accounts. Obviously we have a large number of clients. And many prospective clients, many campaigns that we look at, they will say that their goal is stuff like this, increasing click-through rate. They want to be in position 1 because they want to beat that guy who's always in position 3 and they want to be above him. Or they want to decrease costs, all of which are bad goals, incorrect goals. They are the wrong metrics. They're vanity metrics. Click-through rate is an average. And as soon as you turn on your top versus other report, you realize that click-through rate is vastly, vastly different at the top and on the side. And that increasing click-through rate is actually all about increasing your top impressions, which is meaningless because you don't yet know if you're more profitable in the top than you are at the side. And that's the key word here, is profit. Profit, in a perfect world, the goal is to maximize profit. I'll touch on that a little bit later. At a minimum, we want to be profitable. Now, there's actually quite a big difference between those things, maximizing profit and being profitable. Being profitable is much, much easier. And being profitable might mean having a CPA target or getting a certain number of leads in a range of CPA. Not necessarily saying I need this and I need this and it has to be within this budget and I have to be in position 2. So the one we'll focus on will be CPA because that's probably what most people are running their accounts to as a CPA goal. When we talk about maximizing profit, I'll talk about why that may not be the case. I'm sure you've seen the example I've used before on this of which is more profitable, one lead at $10 or 2 leads at $20. Well, you don't know, you haven't given you enough information to work out the profit, because until you know what my break-even point is, the point where I start losing money, then you have no idea. If my break-even point is $20, then 2 leads at 20 makes me no money. 1 lead at $10 is obviously therefore more profitable. If my break-even was, say, $100, then 1 at $10 makes me $90, 100 minus 10. 2 at 20 makes me 2 lots of $80. 100 minus 20 is $80. 2 of those is 160. Clearly much more profitable than 1 lot of $90. So decreasing CPA is not always the smartest goal. It depends on profit. But that is the most common. I'm going to assume that that's what you are currently managing most accounts to. So we'll talk about that as a sort of a baseline, and then we can talk about maximizing profit a little bit later. So I don't really think this is needed for you guys, but just for the sake of completeness, what are we talking about when we're talking about bidding? Well, we're talking about changing bids of keywords or ad groups. I'm going to mainly focus on search. Obviously, on the display side, you generally would bid at the ad group level, although you can now bid keyword level. You don't bid at campaign level. You don't bid at search query level, you only bid in one of two places, keywords or ad groups. And generally, from a search point of view, we're going to bid at the keyword level because it's more granular, gives us more control. Essentially, the whole thing here of what we're doing is to find outliers. Not Malcolm Gladwell's book, but those keywords or ad groups that are away from the norm. And we want to get more of the good, so we're going to bid those up. And we want to get less of the bad, so we're going to bid those down. That's essentially what we're doing. But we must focus on outcomes. So we can't be looking at that keyword and what the click-through rate or the position of that keyword is, because that's meaningless and that's vanity, because it doesn't take into account the outcome. What happens after the click? In other words, conversions. And therefore, what you use, obviously, as a conversion matters. If you're using a view of the contact page, that's clearly not as good as measuring a view of the contact thank you page, the page that people can only get to if they successfully fill out that contact form. All right, that's all the basic stuff. I know that was boring because I know you know that, but it's a good reminder that, and that's why on my audit process, which you've got in PPCSavvy, the very first question is, what is a conversion? The first thing we need to do when looking at a new account, dig into tools, conversions, and dig into what is being measured, what has been measured in the past, where has that changed, what are we currently looking at, what is being measured as a conversion. Vitally important to understand that, and is it the right thing? And we'll talk in a little bit about Avanash, but I'll talk about it now. I'm not sure I have a slide here. Avanash, Occam's razor, if you do a search for, let's say, macro and micro conversions, Avanash, analytics tip 13. There you go, something along those lines. But macro and micro conversions, wonderful blog post by Avanash, which I may or may not have a screenshot of coming up. Well worth a read. You have to read that if you're measuring goals in analytics or conversions in AdWords and understanding what you want to measure. Vitally important. So, before we get into all of the different ways to automate your bidding and to help you with automating bidding, let's attack the question of should you automate bidding, because the answer to any complicated question, obviously, is it depends. On the no side, we would say, look, we're all control freaks. We can take into account things like seasonality, which maybe Google can't. We know the history of this account. We know what happens to various keywords. We don't trust the Google system. That's one I hear a lot. I don't trust the Google system to do this. Look, one we've experienced here at WebSavvy is you turn on some of these strategies, Conversion Optimizer, for instance, and results suddenly start getting worse because the machine blindly takes over and doesn't factor in all of the information, particularly when you have a very granular setup, when you've got, single keyword ad groups, SKAGs they're sometimes called, single keyword ad groups, SKAG. With that sort of setup, sometimes the machine can get a bit confused. However, on the other side of the fence, I would say that changing bids, particularly changing bids based on a set of rules, and if you think about it, every bid change you have is kind of based on either some sort of explicit rule that you have, maybe a checklist that you're following, or some sort of implicit rule, something that if you think about why you're changing that bid at the moment that you're changing it, and someone were to stand behind you and say, why? Well, because blah, blah, blah. Well, why is that? Well, because blah, blah, blah. And if you dig in, you are actually following a set of rules. And following sets of rules is boring, repetitive work. Certainly you'll know this if you're doing it. If you have a team working with you or for you, then you want them working on the highest level, most difficult stuff that they can do. You don't want them doing boring, repetitive work because they're going to get bored and they're going to leave. The other main reason here is that we are heading for a point in time, and it's really not very far away, and some would argue we're already there, where there's just too much data to manage manually. Particularly on the display side, where there's even more data. Google will factor in arguably more data about the site that the visitor is on, the page on that site that they're on, which other sites and pages have they looked at in the recent past? How does their display history match their search history? What do we know about this person? Do we know that they tend to convert or they don't? Do we know that they tend to only jump on sites for 30 seconds at a time on a Tuesday because they're at work? But if I show this ad to this person on a Saturday when they're on that laptop, which I'm pretty sure is theirs because I've matched up their Google logins, then Google has all of this information, including testing the phase of the moon, by the way, which I think is rather an interesting one. They tested if the phase of the moon had any impact on conversions and on what people did online. It didn't, I believe, and I don't think they use it anymore. But the fact that they're even looking at that stuff tells you how much data they have available and how many factors they're able to look at, which is far, far more than we are able to do. Even from a search point of view, you've got your keyword and how does this keyword perform, but we know nothing about the people searching for those keywords. But then you've got to factor in device, and then you've got to factor in location, which is difficult for us because we need to use a fairly sort of gross measure for that, like state level. Google can probably factor in all the way down to zip code level and what it knows about those different zip codes, because it's watching everybody that's in that zip code, not just the one person that we get to see in that one moment. So Google has a ton more data. Interesting article that Fred Valles actually pointed me to in Wired magazine. I think it was January 2014. Sorry, don't know the name of the article, but it essentially said computers are going to beat humans when it comes to making large decisions very quickly. Duh. Not difficult to argue with that. Very difficult to argue with that. Computers obviously very, very good at making lots of decisions quickly. However, it gave on. Can't talk this morning. Went on to show that yes, a computer is going to beat a human at chess every time, for instance, but a human aided by a computer actually beat the computers. And I think the stat was something like they were 15% better. So what we want to think about is this context of your very talented, experienced human staff, employees, team members, call them what you will. I prefer team members. Using the power of the computers, using the power of some of this automation to not only make their lives better, more interesting, more fun, working on higher level, more strategic stuff, taking away the boring and repetitive work, but also combining that human oversight with some of this automation. So you don't blindly chuck it in and use it and set and forget and never look at it again. You still have some human oversight. That's probably the best combination. Okay, so with context set, let's look at the 6 flexible bid strategies that are available in the Google system. And there are 6. I've summarized them here in this table. We've got the name over on the left, the goal that you might have, i.e. when you might want to use one of these strategies, and then what they're applied to, or what they can be applied to, over on the right. C for campaign, A for ad group, K for keyword, obviously. And you'll see that all but target CPA and enhanced can apply at all 3 levels. Those 2 can only apply at the campaign or ad group level. So first one, maximize clicks. And I'm going to go through each of these in order and talk about what they do, and then we'll talk about how to apply them. So very quickly, maximize clicks if you wanted more traffic and cheap clicks. So Google's going to try and get you more clicks for your money. Page location is either targeting the first page or the top of the page. Outranking share, so that's where you're telling Google to outrank a particular domain. Target CPA, you're telling Google to get you more conversions at that target CPA amount. Enhanced CPC, Google's going to just raise and lower your bids, but you still retain some control because you still get to set that base bid. And target ROAS, which stands for return on ad spend, particularly useful when your conversion values are different. Okay, so let's dive in. Maximize clicks first. I'll make this easy for you. I never use this one. I would recommend that you don't either, for one simple reason, that cheap does not equal good. I don't want cheap clicks. I want clicks that convert. So I think this is one of those Google funding policies, let's call them, where it's for the not so smart advertisers, stupidity tax. Yes, go spend my budget, get me lots of clicks, make me feel good. Now, I suppose there might be some cases where you might use this more of a branding thing. You just want to drive traffic into a site, maybe doing testing, but I don't know. I can't honestly think of a really good application where lots of clicks of unknown quality are better than high quality clicks. So I just don't use that. Move on. Page location, as I said just now, we can either target the top of the page or the first page. So you can automatically tell Google to change the bids of particular keywords or ad groups, or you can use this at a campaign level, as we just saw, and say just sort out everything inside this campaign, which might be useful for a brand campaign, for instance, where you're pretty certain that you want to be at the top of the page. Just in case you haven't seen, you can turn on these additional columns. So if you're on the keyword report in the interface, you can turn on these extra two columns of estimate first page bid and estimate top page bid. Now, these numbers are just a guide. It's really important to remember that, yes, as quality score changes, these will change, but I've seen some research recently that suggests that there's actually quite a lag, particularly on top of page, changing as quality score changes. So you work hard to improve that quality score, thinking that your top of page and first page bids will reduce, and they will eventually, but it's not like if you go from a 6 to a 7 today, that your top of page bid is going to drop from $1.43 here down to, who knows, $1.20, $1.10, $1 the same day. That's going to lag. And so use this with caution. Probably use it on those instances, like I just mentioned, with a brand campaign, where you know that you do want to maintain that high position. Even first page bid, I would use with caution about saying just don't necessarily apply that to every non-brand search campaign you have, saying like, Google, get me on the first page, because there will be cases where that first page bid is quite high. You get these weird anomalies and you don't necessarily want to be bidding that high. So use with caution. One of the best ways to add some caution to this, if you're going to use this, is there's an option to set a maximum bid limit. I suggest you do use that. I think Google probably says not recommended next to it, but I would always do that. Just think of it as a fail-safe. So in other words, if your bid is currently 75 cents and you're saying, yes, Google, you can take over the bidding of this keyword and you can push it up to the first page bid. Whenever the first page bid is higher than my current bid, feel free to bump the bid up. However, as a fail-safe, I'm going to set an upper limit here of $1.30, so you cannot go more than that, just in case something gets out of whack. Who knows, there's a bug in the system, or I have a horrible run of quality score for a couple of weeks and all the estimates shoot up. Please do not bid more than this, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to be profitable at that sort of level. Outranking, target outranking share. So this is an interesting one. And if you've played around with Auction Insights, which I'll show you in a second, then I'll show you some of the data that's there. But essentially this bid strategy is, well, another one that I would rarely use, because you're saying to Google, try and beat that particular competitor and try and show my ad above theirs when possible. No guarantees, but it'll try. So it's going to increase your bid to try and beat a particular domain. So it's one domain at a time. Again, no guarantees that it's going to work. And it's going to use, well, the best place you can start with this is your Auction Insights report. Now, obviously, you can run this report if you're not sure. You can run this across various entities inside your account, campaign level, ad group level, or keyword level, and you can run it on all of those entities, i.e. all keywords, all ad groups, or a subset of those, a selection of those. So here you can see I'm in the ad group tab. Obviously there's below where I took the screenshot, there's a big list of ad groups. If I don't tick any of those ad groups and I go under the details tab, then auction insights, the only option here I have is to select all of the ad groups. If I were to tick a few of those ad groups and then go in under details, I could choose auction insights selected. In other words, show me the auction insights just for those selected ad groups. And you can do the same at keyword or campaign level. When you pull up an auction insights report, when you've decided which bits you're going to look at, you're going to see some data that looks like this. So this is going to list your main competitors, if you like, over on the left-hand side. Now, bear in mind, it's only going to show you data about the auctions that you qualified for. So if you're not bidding on a particular keyword, or I suppose more technically, if your keywords don't match to a search query that everybody else has in their accounts and you're never in those auctions, then you're not going to see any data about that. So it's not going to tell you necessarily who all of your competitors are. It's going to tell you who the competitors are. Think of it as your competitors for your keywords. Okay, competitors for the auctions that you're in. You need a bit of data to run this. If you've got really tiny, if you've got tiny amounts of data at, for a particular keyword or so, or whatever it might be, then this may not give you data, in which case broaden the scope, choose more ad groups, more campaigns. I won't run through what all the numbers are. If you want to know what they all are, then I would suggest running this report because it'll make more sense for you in the context of your account. And obviously you can just run over the little question marks at the top of each column there. But essentially it's telling you your impression share compared to those competitors, position, and a bunch of other stats. So what you can do is you can use this data and say, right, okay, Fox Symes at the top here, they're showing towards the top of the page all the time. If you were being super aggressive, you could, I wouldn't recommend it at all, but you could tell Google to say, right, set my bid such that I try and outrank Fox Symes or Debt Relief or whatever it is as much of the time as you can. Again, no guarantees, and you definitely want to use that upper bid, that bid fail-safe, that maximum bid in this case. But this is what you can do. Just a tip on this one, give this one at least a week, if not two. It does take a while to settle down. Again, use it sparingly. I can't think of too many cases where you might use this, other than, again, potentially brand. So if you have a competitor that's bidding on your brand, and you know that's the only other ad that shows up often, then you might want to say, okay, Google, I'm willing to spend a bit more money. If they're trying to run an ad at the same time, then I'm willing to allow you to increase my bid to make sure I show above that particular competitor for my brand name. But for non-brand search, I would use this sparingly. Target CPA. All right, so this is one of the two. Just as a reminder that you cannot apply at a keyword level. This has to be applied at the campaign or ad group level. And typically to campaigns with at least 15 conversions in the last 30 days. That's the now softened rule that Google has set. And I say typically because if you've got lots of other campaigns measuring the same stuff with lots of conversion data in there, then Google will say, no, not a problem. I've got enough data from these other campaigns. This campaign doesn't need to wait until you hit that threshold of 15 conversions in 30 days. Typically, I would say wait for a bit more, 50 to 100 conversions in a month if you can. The more data Google has, the more accurate it's going to be using this bid strategy. Essentially, it's all machine learning, so the more data, the better. And one of the things they do say in the Google Help section for this, but it is buried, is you want to ensure that you have a consistent conversion rate running for a while before you turn this on. So again, I would make sure that you have a nice consistent conversion rate, i.e. no massive changes to the landing page. You haven't just changed all the URLs. You haven't just changed your offer for at least a month before you turn this on. So you set a target CPA. So there used to be two options here, target CPA and max CPA. Max CPA has been retired. So you're just telling Google, okay, I want you to try and get me conversions for no more than $20 or $150 or whatever your target is. Again, you can set bid limits. I reckon it's worth doing. I don't ever use the minimum bid limit, but I will use the maximum bid limit to say, do not go above this particular amount. How much room do I give it, if you like? I would say somewhere between, depending on how aggressive you want to be and what your risk tolerance is. Let's say my base bid is $1. I'm probably going to set that upper bid limit somewhere between $1.50 and $2. So sort of 50 to 100% higher. So it's got lots of room to move, but it can't go stupid and go set bids at $10 when I would normally set my bid at $1. Even if it thinks this person is really, really likely to convert, I would, because I'm a control freak, I would rather maintain a bit of control and say, look, okay, you really think this person's going to convert, you can double my bid, but you can't 10x it. Enhanced CPC. This is a nice, easy one to get started with. I recommend that you have a play with this one on an existing account if you haven't used any of these flexible bid strategies before, just because it's easy to get started with, and it can't do too much damage, quite frankly. Essentially, Google will take over the bidding, but you've set your baseline bids, and Google will then say, okay, I'm allowed to raise these bids by up to 30% or lower them by up to 100%. In other words, choose not to bid at all for this if I think it's a waste of time. And one interesting thing with this one is that it starts with only 50% of the traffic for that particular ad group or that campaign, depending on obviously where you have set this. Bid mods, or I guess we should call these bid adjustments these days, are still taken into account. So if you've been running this manually and you've got your bid adjustments set for mobile or for location, for time of day, then it's still going to take that into account and use your bid modifications. Target CPA, however, is going to ignore those completely. So this is a good conservative place to start. It also takes into account RLSA, I believe. Return on ad spend. So the last of our 6. Now this is pretty essential, I would say, when you have a range of different conversion values. So let's look at a couple of options here. Let's say you've got an extreme case where you have a lead gen site and you have 2 values on the site. You've got 2 conversions with very, very different values. You've got a PDF download, which is only worth $1 to you, and you've got someone filling in a form, which is worth $1,000. If you run e-commerce sites, then this is going to be more obvious to you. Unless you only sell one product and they're all the same price, most e-com sites are going to sell a variety of products. We've got a client that just started with us. I think their lowest price product on the site is $29. On the high side, $6,500. So I don't want to count all of those conversions equally. I don't want to say a conversion is worth X, because depending on what we sell, it's worth a very, very different amount. And therefore, ultimately, I want to be bidding different amounts for those different clicks. I want to be spending a lot more money per click on a click that might lead to a $6,500 sale of, I don't know, some big wooden dining table, for instance, compared to the click that might lead to the sale of the $29 table lamp. So I'm going to keep it really, really simple, and we'll use PDF and a form fill here as the example. They are worth $1 and $1,000 to me. And yet, if you don't use value, then the data in your account looks like this. I've got 2 keywords here, and to give it a little bit of context, I've chosen a guide here, telescope guide versus telescope price. Telescope guide, as you may not be too surprised, you've got 45 PDF downloads, like the majority of people searching for that keyword in our fictional example are downloading PDFs. But now you may know the 45 and the 5. If you use custom columns, you can split apart your conversion data and say, I believe, I'm pretty sure that now that this doesn't work with converted clicks anymore, which is a real pain in the ass. I can sort of understand why they did it, but it's annoying. So custom columns now will only work with conversions, not with converted clicks. So depending on all of your other reporting, we tend to use converted clicks in all of our other reporting. And so it's really difficult then to try and explain to a client how these numbers are totally different to the other numbers that you report on, because now we're using conversions, not converted clicks, and that's why these numbers are different. And then you've got to go through that whole explanation. Even though you've done it 3 times already, you have to explain again what conversions are and why they're different from converted clicks and why you use one, not the other. It's just a pain. So let's just say you don't even do that, and you've got 50 conversions with a CPA of $10. You've spent $500 on the top keyword, and you spent $6,000 on the bottom keyword to get 40 conversions, giving you a CPA of 150. Which is the better keyword? Well, you don't yet know. And until you factor in value, you don't know. And I can see that I've done the maths wrong at the bottom there, because it... Oh, no, I haven't. Sorry, 10 PDFs, 10 times 1. Sorry, too early in the morning here. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. And this is why I didn't build this slide this morning, which is a good thing. And so the bottom one, I've got 30 lots of 1,000, giving me a value of 30,010. And at the top there, a value of 5,045. So that's lovely. Now I've worked out the value. Now I have to take into account value and cost. And so in your AdWords account, you'll find a column next to total value called value per cost. This is the number that is so important anytime you are using conversions with different values. So again, could be a lead gen site, almost certainly going to be the case for an e-com site. And once you've read Avanash's blog post that we talked about before, macro and micro conversions, Occam's razor, then you're probably going to use more conversions in your account, and you're going to understand how to value those. And you will be wanting to track things like PDF downloads or clicks on social buttons or various events that might happen on your website. All of that gives you more context, gives you more data in order to better bid your keywords. But until you understand that this top keyword here is twice as valuable as the bottom keyword. In other words, so value per cost is essentially how much value do I make for every dollar I tip in. So it's a simple ratio. Top keyword here, I'm going to make 10 units of value, because I'll often play the points game when we're valuing different conversions. It's just a bit of a tip. Don't have a slide for this, but I found this works really well with clients particularly. When you're listing out all of these conversions, just say, how many points should we give this one? How many points should we give? Let's start at the bottom here, and we'll say, for someone downloading a PDF, that's 1 point. Now value everything else relative to that. So somebody watching this video over here, well, let's call that a point as well. Somebody viewing the store locator page, well, that might be worth 5 points. But somebody buying from us, that might be worth, well, let's use the revenue from analytics. Let's pass that revenue number back across to AdWords. Somebody filling out this particular form, maybe that's worth 100 points. So rather than saying that this is economic value and putting a dollar sign in front of those points, which tends to freak people out, I tend to just say points. So Telescope Guide here, I get 10 units of value, 10 points for every dollar I tip in. Telescope Price, I get 5 points. So while it looked like it might have been a better keyword there for a while, it got 30 of the really good outcomes that we're interested in, people filling out this really valuable form. But because it costs $6,000, 30 grand divided by $6,000, near enough, is 5. So value per cost, super important. And so what return on ad spend is simply a percentage. So it's the value per cost multiplied by 100. So if we had seen in that previous example, we had 10 and 5, if we were to say to Google, I need to have a return on ad spend of at least 800%. Let's go back and look at this. If my target return on ad spend, in order for it to be profitable for me to run AdWords, for instance, was 800%, then that bottom keyword has some work to do. And we could either manually reduce the bid on that keyword, or if we were using target ROAS, Google would do that for us and adjust the bid for Telescope Price in order to try and hit a higher return on ad spend. So in other words, in order to try and get that 30 grand of value by only spending around sort of 3.5 to 4 grand, somewhere in that range. So value per cost times 100. All right, so that's the overview of the strategies. Now, how do we go create these in our account? I'm not going to talk about all of them here, but just the main ones that you'll probably use, starting with enhanced. Because this is, again, the one where you probably want to start. Now, there's two ways to do this. You don't actually need to use the flexible bid strategy unless you want to. You could set enhanced CPC, and this has led to a little bit of confusion, I know, in the past. But you can set enhanced CPC as a campaign level setting. So you go to your campaigns tab, go to settings for an individual campaign, and you can choose under the bid strategy section, you can choose to enable enhanced CPC across the entire campaign. Or if you want, and this is the way to get into all of these bid strategies, you go to the shared library, tends to be down the bottom left of your account, and then bid strategies, dive in there. It'll be blank when you start off. So you hit the big red plus bid strategy button, and from the drop down that pops up, enhanced CPC. And obviously this is the same place you go for all of the other ones that we're about to talk about. Pretty easy to set this one up. There's not a whole lot you need to do. You just need to go in here and give it a name and then hit save. And I'll show you how to apply these bid strategies to various entities in your account in a second. First, I'm going to show you how to create them all. So target page location, if you were to use this, same deal as before, shared library, bid strategies, big red button. Then you're going to give it a name. So I am reasonably fanatical with naming stuff. In WebSavvy, we have a convention for campaign names. We tend to use lowercase for every single keyword, and we name bid strategies so that everybody knows what they are at a glance and you don't have to dig into settings. And if you're inheriting an account and you're going to stick with their bid strategies, I would also go in and rename their bid strategies to your taxonomy, to your syntax, if you like. It's just much easier. I've seen some weird, wacky names for this stuff, and you can't see at a glance what it's actually doing. So target top of page, max $2. It's pretty self-explanatory. I have a choice of location between top of page and anywhere on the first page. I've got a bid automation option here. Well, if we're going to use automation, we might as well tick the automation option and let Google be in charge. But you might want to go the sort of manual option, which is the little more conservative, little safer way to do it if you want. You've also got this option to adjust it. So I've seen this used quite a bit, where you might say aim for anywhere on the first page, but add 20%, just to sort of almost really make sure that I'm going to get on that first page bid. Now, you can't sort of guarantee that that's going to get you a position 6 or position 7 by saying get me on the first page and then up my bids by 20%. But it's just that sort of, I really want to be on the first page, or I really want to be top of page for this group of keywords, and therefore I'm going to add a bid adjustment on top of saying get me to the top or get me on the first page. And then in this case, as I've said, I would always have some kind of sort of fail-safe maximum bid limit. In this case, we've used $2, and that's why I've got it in the name of the bid strategy, obviously. Advanced options right down the bottom here. A couple of those, I tend to leave those on the recommended options. So don't raise bids if my campaign is limited by budget. There's really not much point. I don't know that I trust Google enough to say, okay, like, I know you're running out of money. I know we haven't got many clicks left for the day, but I'm really certain that this person's going to convert. So I'm going to bid more on this particular click. I would rather, if a campaign is limited by budget, there's probably other reasons for that. There's a whole conversation we could have about having unlimited budgets when things are profitable. If the campaign is limited by budget for a particular reason, I'm sure there's a reason for it, and then I'm going to say don't raise bids. Same deal with low quality score. If you allow Google to raise bids on low QS keywords, you may find you're spending huge amounts of money on those clicks, and they're probably low quality score for a reason. You're better off fixing low quality score. We'll talk later when we talk Fred's bid buckets about running scripts to flag those low quality score keywords. I mean, you could just go to your account, keyword tab, sort by quality score, and fix that low QS stuff first, rather than allowing Google to bid whatever it wants, even on those low quality keywords. Target CPA. So this is probably one of the ones that you're going to use as you get used to Google's bidding. So when you set this up the first time, you can see here in this particular demo account, I've only got the one campaign. And so you can see in the middle of the screen, I've blurred that out. There's no data to go with that campaign. So I've just given my target CPA strategy a name, and I'm using that target in the name so that I know what the target is for this particular strategy. Not rocket science, is it? Target CPA down the bottom there, I've set to $30. Now, if you've got existing data in your account, when you go and set this up, you will see the average CPAs for your existing campaigns. And obviously you can apply, if you wanted to, you can apply, which is this include campaigns optional section. You can, at the same time that you build the strategy, apply this, but you can only apply it to the entire campaigns at this point. If you want to apply the target CPA to individual ad groups, then you'll want to do what I've done here. Just give it a name, give it a target CPA, in this case €5, and hit save, and then go off to the particular account, the particular campaign or the particular ad groups that you want to apply this to, and choose the ad groups you want to apply to. If you're happy to apply it to entire campaigns, then you can just click on the chevron off to the right of the campaign name and add it to the list over on the right hand side. I'm sure you're familiar with that part of the interface. It's used in a number of other areas. Advanced options we have again down the bottom there, always hidden, just to try and help you to not do them, which is what makes me suspicious, and I like to do things that Google hides. I would use the max bid limit. I think we've talked about that enough. And ROAS, return on ad spend, same deal. You give it a name. You can include campaigns right at the start if you want, and it lists the campaigns there that you can use as a guide. Yes, this is a brand campaign. I'm cheating to make it a much nicer screenshot. Lots of high percentages, and in this case, based off the numbers there, I've said, okay, I might have a target ROAS of 5,000%. Unlikely that you're going to have one that high. All right, how to apply them. So again, quick reminder, all but CPA and enhanced can apply at campaign, ad group, and keyword level. CPA and enhanced only at the campaign and ad group level. And this is how you apply them. It's very, very simple. Let's assume that you wanted to apply a bid strategy just to a few ad groups here. You can see I've just ticked, I'm on the ad group tab, and I've just ticked the top 4 ad groups. I find that bid strategy drop down and then say use a flexible bid strategy that I've already set up. And it pops up a little list of all of the ones that I've already created. In this case, I took the screenshot when I'd only set up the enhanced CPC. So I can then highlight that, make changes, and then once that's done, it looks like this in your account. Pretty easy. So you can do that for most bid strategies at the keyword level as well, for enhanced and target CPA, individual ad groups if you like, or entire campaigns. A couple of warnings from Google. So this is wording taken straight out of the Help Center that I thought was worth highlighting here. I won't read out every word because I hate it when people read slides, but you've got the copies, you've got the screen in front of you, you've got the PDF of the slides linked somewhere if you really want to read this. Essentially, Google's saying, give me time, please. And you'll hear this over and over again too from your Google rep, if you have one, where you might apply one of these strategies and results go south for a bit. They will say, give it time, give it time, give it time. The party line is give it time. The machine needs more data. The machine needs more time. Give it another week or two. There's only so much of that you can take. Now, that's fine to give it the first week or two. And I would recommend that if you're going to use this, you may want to consider talking to your client and letting them know that you're making some changes on the account. You may see a little dip in results, but there's a reason behind it, and you're hoping that, or the idea behind this optimization is XYZ, and this is what we're aiming to do. I don't know how much of exactly what you're doing you want to try and explain to Google, to your client rather. That's entirely up to you. But some sort of warning might be good if results indeed may dip. Now, it doesn't always dip. I would say most of these strategies probably work around 80% of the time. That's pretty vague. But there are definitely cases that we've seen, and even where we have not been very aggressive, even where we've given Google a bit of leeway with our target CPA. In other words, we might be currently running at $20, and we've said, okay, your target Google is 25. I'm going to give you a bit of wiggle room here. If you've been running at $20, you do not want to go in and say, right, Google, you've now got to get me conversions at 15, something that's quite a bit lower than what you've currently been running at, because Google will freak out a bit, and in that case, volume will probably drop. So you may end up hitting the CPA target, but the volume could drop substantially. So you want to give it a sensible target that it's likely to be able to hit. Likewise, I should say, while we're on this topic, if you've been running at $20, don't turn target CPA on and give it a target of $50, something that's way, way above where you've currently been running, because that will freak the machine out too. Anyway, back to our regular programming. Wait for AdWords to learn your new strategy. So in other words, it needs data. It needs data, and it wants to say, look, let me learn. There comes a point, and I've read a few blog posts by other professionals about this, and they've clearly been given the same party line by Google. The consensus is amongst us all that trust your gut. And when this thing has been running too expensive for too long, and it doesn't look like it's turning the corner, in the real world, with real dollars at stake, there's only so much of that you can bear. So you need to just turn it off, go back to manual bidding, get it back to profitable, and then consider maybe down the track testing one of these bid strategies again. So don't be scared of that. I know I've just made it sound horrible, but it works most of the time. But keep an eye on it. Again, human oversight with computer automation. Keep an eye on it, track your numbers, make sure that it's working for you. A couple of tools to help you make sure things are working. So there's a dashboard that we're going to see, but also Google will tell you the status of a particular bid strategy. So if you dig into your bid strategy screen through that shared library, you'll see the status column there, and it says that this particular one here, top of page for brand was the name here, that this one is still learning. So it'll tell you those various things, and there's a few reasons that it might be learning. It's a new strategy. The budget has just changed significantly, so be very wary especially with big budget changes where you have these flexible bid strategies applied. Settings or structure may have changed too. So there are all the reasons that it might be learning. Excuse me. Now there's some reasons too, just for the sake of completeness here, why it may be limited. So one of the other statuses that you're going to see can be limited, and there's a few reasons for that. If you're bumping up against those maximum bid limits that you set before, not enough data, low priority spend is essentially manual. If you have a range, let's say inside a campaign you have some ad groups set to manual, some ad groups using a flexible bid strategy, Google's going to give preference to the manual stuff, and therefore the low priority refers to the fact that that bid strategy isn't getting enough traffic to work on, and therefore it's unable to do its thing, essentially. Obviously budget constraints, an obvious one. There's not enough budget to go around. It can't learn if it's not spending any money and it's not getting clicks, or low quality score. And then the dashboard. So you have a little dashboard now for every bid strategy. This is really cool. It's obviously much, much easier now to see at a glance how you are performing relative to your goal. Excuse me. So you can see here the red line being my target CPA, currently $17.50. The blue line showing that I've consistently hit that up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we started making some changes to this campaign, and things got a little bit wobbly after that, but it still managed to hit that target on average. You can see there's been one particularly bad day and a couple of days there where it's gone over, but on average it's still doing well. And I just wanted to highlight this one because this is a strategy that I suspect you'll use on some of your accounts, so top of page targeting. And I just wanted to pull up this chart just to show you how I think this chart is misleading, because if you look very carefully you'll see that the left axis, the top of that, is 5,000. The right axis on the chart at the top there, we got 5,500. So it looks like the two lines are on top of each other, which makes it look like all of your impressions were top of page impressions, all of your impressions being the red line, top of page impressions being the blue line. But actually you realize that the scale for all of the impressions is actually about 10% higher. So I think they should use the same scale for this. I know this is really minor and really picky, but it's important because pictures give you insights. Pictures are better than data, and pictures are what lead to insights and what lead to changes inside your account. So unless you deeply understand the picture, and I think this is a misleading picture at a glance until you dig in. But what this is telling me is that we got top of page around about 90% of the time, because 5,000 is roughly 90% of 5,500. We sort of hit that pretty consistently. I just think they should use the same scale for this and draw two lines, one below the other. It would be visually easier to see that I'm hitting top of page around 90% of the time. Anyway, minor.